Let's take a look at what's new in network services in Windows Server 2008. Now, I think this is the part of Windows Server 2008 that a few years from now we'll look back and say, wow, this was a real turning point. Because network services are where the real interesting changes got made to Windows Server 2008. The first thing I want to talk about is network access protection. Now, this is something, it's a whole new set of technologies in Windows Server 2008, and it's such a potential big deal. I'm going to do a separate video section on these first two, but network access protection for sure. This is basically the ability for your system to protect itself from viruses, spyware, and malware and various things that come in from the outside quite innocently, and we'll talk about that in a lot more depth in the upcoming video on network access protection. There's a new Windows interface on a lot of things. You will usually end up at the same graphical tool that you've always used for various events, but there's a lot of times new Windows interface to get there. Good example, the server manager, all of your tools are in one place for managing your server, but you're going to see some new Windows looks and feels, and sometimes it's slicker, sometimes it seems a little bit clunky, but we'll talk about them identify them as we go through there. And then probably the single biggest thing that's going to come about in Windows Server 2008, IP version 6. Now this is one that's not going to make a big splash right now. It's not like you're going to see this thing change your world right now, but in the future, I think in the next 5 years or maybe even shorter than that, we'll look back and say, wow, Windows Server 2008 is the first time we really saw IP version 6. Now, IP version 6 has been supported since Windows Server 2003, but it took some work to get it there. In Windows Server 2008, IP version 6 is working. It's enabled and it's just happening right now. So you could work in an IP version 6 environment on Windows Server 2008 right now. And this is going to change a lot of things, and it's going to be quite a big deal. Some of the other things I just want to mention here is in Windows Server 2008 network services, we now have integration with Cisco Network Admission Control, and so you see where this thing's going. We're really starting to hone in on security, on controlling access to our network and to the various resources on the network and so forth. And so that's a new addition. And then this is a real interesting one. And you look at this one and you think, man, why didn't we think of that before? But that is our ability to control network policies or apply network policies based on the connection method. And this just makes sense if you think about it. I mean, if you're connecting via VPN, you need a certain network policy. If you're connecting via dial-up, you need another one. And if you're just jumping on the wireless LAN, then obviously we need another one there. So now you have the ability to apply different policies based on how that particular client or user actually connected to the network. Now, I think it's probably pretty safe to say from the 50,000-foot view that network services got probably most of the major revisions in Windows Server 2008. And the biggest one is going to be IP version 6. And we'll talk about that. There'll be a couple of videos a little bit later on about IP version 6. But between IP version 6 and network access protection, there's going to be a lot of functionality that really is going to talk to the ability of our computers to continue to work smarter, to continue to configure themselves and protect themselves without administrator attention, without administrator time. And again, think about one of Microsoft's major goals here, and that is to get this operating system away from being such a strongly babysat kind of a environment where we can take our hands off of it and not do maintenance and security updates constantly, but actually deal with getting the job done that we were there to do, which was to control the network, to monitor the network, and to keep it running at its most efficient level possible. And especially that part about monitoring and watching the health of the network, and then continuing to architect out as the network ever expands and changes as new technologies come in. So that's where we're headed here. So a lot of things happen in network services to get us to that place. One of the things that you're going to hear a lot about over time is network access protection. Now this is a whole new functionality that's being added to the Windows Server 2008 operating system, and I want to kind of go over it here. Okay, and I want you to understand this is a serious commitment to a technology, but it has some far-reaching possibilities on your network from a security standpoint, but also from an administrator's life and efficiency standpoint. First of all, understand network access protection is a new set of operating system components being introduced into the Windows Server 2008 environment, and this whole system serves the purpose of ensuring proper and safe client computer configuration. Now, it's kind of the standard operating mode for most administrators that somebody brings a computer from home, somebody takes a thumb drive and sticks it in a machine at home and then sticks it in one at work. Somebody brings a laptop from home and puts it on the wireless network, and you know what happens. There's a virus, there's spyware, there's some sort of malware on that computer, and it gets introduced into our environment, and it causes all kind of problems. So what the new network access protection system or family of functionalities is going to do is it's going to monitor clients, and whenever they attempt to connect to the network or communicate on the network, it's going to basically look at their machine and it's going to determine the health of that computer. So we're going to check to make sure that some things are set up on that computer and some things are running to help ensure that we don't introduce trouble into our network. Now, it'll allow an administrator to ensure the health, first of all, of the desktop computers on the LAN, on their network. Do they have antivirus software installed? Is it running? Is it up to date? That sort of thing. It'll enforce health requirements for laptops, for people who take them home, for salespeople. There was I saw some numbers just the other day, and it was like that laptop sales were now had now outstripped desktop sales. But as we continue to see various handheld devices that are true internet devices, and just the continued explosion of wireless access all over the world, you're going to see more and more laptops and so forth. This is a huge one. Administrators will be able to verify the health of unmanaged home computers. Again, it's a way of doing business now that a lot of our people, especially our sales and support people, work from home a lot of times. And a lot of times they're working or they're connecting to our network via unmanaged home computers, which means they've had this computer in their home for years. 4 or 5 people in the home are using it, and now they're going to connect it to our network to do anything from work with emails or shared files and folders or run applications or whatever. And then another big one is to verify the health of visitors or partners' laptops. And I've seen this happen so often that a visitor, a partner, a vendor comes in for a meeting, opens their laptop, hooks up to your wireless network, and introduces something accidentally. It's a uncomfortable situation, and it's just a nasty one to have to deal with. Something else that's really cool, this whole network access protection environment has an API out there for developers to hook into and add various functionalities into current software that they're building. So the software itself can access this. Now, how do we get network access protection? One of the things that you're going to have, and keep in mind, this is not just a little checkbox. So I can't show you in Windows Server 2008 where you go in and just kind of click and turn this on and everything's happening. This is a serious commitment. Windows Server 2008 running the Network Policy Service, this will basically run as the brains of this. You'll need Windows Vista or Windows XP Service Pack 2 on your clients, and then you will have to have the Network Access Protection client actually installed on XP. It'll be there on Windows Vista with Service Pack 1. Now, once a client connects to my network or tries to communicate on my network, this Network Access Protection System is going to basically scan that computer and check it to see if it's got its software, spyware on the machine up to date running, if it has antivirus on the machine up to date running, and based on what we find, we can either allow them full network access for a limited time, or we can just give them limited access. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next video. Notice the thing that it's checking, and I've alluded to this a couple of times already in this video. We're making sure that this particular client's that try to connect have firewall software installed and enabled. Now keep in mind, we're not scanning them for viruses. We're just checking to see, do they have themselves protected from them. Now, is this going to ensure that we don't ever get infected again? No, but it makes it a lot safer when we know kind of what kind of shape our clients are in. We're going to check and make sure they have antivirus software installed and running. We're going to make sure they have current antivirus updates installed, that they have current anti-spyware installed, and that they have the updates, the latest updates on that anti-spyware installed. We're also going to check to see if they have Microsoft Update services enabled to make sure that their computer itself is patched and up to date. And then we have auto remediation. We can even set this thing up that, if you don't have this stuff, then we'll put it on your machine for you. So we're going to protect our network by making sure that the people that come onto our network are clean and as protected as they can be. Now, we'll talk in the next video about exactly what's involved in setting this up and getting it working. See you there. Now, before I leave the subject of network access protection, I want to kind of go through exactly how this is going to help you and then give you an idea of the scope of network access protection and what it takes to actually get this kicked off and working on your network. First of all, the main purpose of network access protection is certainly to protect your network from malware. By that we mean viruses, spyware, all that sort of thing. But the big advantage here is lower total cost of ownership, or TOC. You'll hear about TOC all over Microsoft's marketing materials and all over their metrics, but that is really what it's all about, lowering the total cost of ownership for all these systems. That does not just mean the price tag of the hardware or the software, but that means the amount of time that it takes for network administrators to manage this thing and keep it up and breathing and working. So the first thing it does is gives you lower total ownership cost by centralizing the configuration and management of such things as your spyware, your antivirus software, and so forth. And it gives you an automated system health. It gives you another level of protection, another level of peace of mind, if you will, that the various clients being connected to your system are being scanned and checked to make sure that they come up to speed with the kind of safety that you need on your network. Now, the next one is automated configuration. We can actually configure network access protection to fix any deficiencies that it finds in any of the clients that are connecting to your network. Then, obviously, the reduced chance of malware infection. And everybody watching this video, I guarantee you, you've been through a situation where you went to a website either on purpose or by accident and you picked up some nasty spyware or some virus, and it just takes 3 or 4 hours or even a day of your life to get that thing cleaned off your machine. And those things in a large network can be absolutely troublesome. And so reducing the chance of having to deal with that stuff is huge. Now, let's talk about what it takes to actually make this happen. And again, I mentioned in a different video, this is not something you just kind of check a box or flip and turn on. Look at what has to happen here. First of all, you need NAP clients, or Network Access Protection Enabled clients. And again, that's going to be Windows Server 2008, Windows Vista, and then XP with Service Pack 2. And the XP, you'll actually have to load a NAP client on it. But then you're going to need NAP enforcement points. Now, the enforcement points are basically computers or network devices that use NAP, or they can be used with NAP to require the evaluation of the client's health state, and then based on what it finds there, determine exactly what kind of connection this particular client is going to get on the network. Are they going to have limited access, full access, access for a certain amount of time, and so forth. And these enforcement points use a network policy server that's going to act as like a NAP, a health policy server. Now, this NPS, or network policy server, is really the Windows 2008 version of a Radius server. And if you don't know what Radius server is, it's a little beyond this course. Just go out and do a search on Radius on the Microsoft website and read up about that, okay? But then this network, this NAP enforcement point's also going to evaluate. This is what actually evaluates the health of your NAP client. And then I mentioned a couple of seconds ago the health policy server. This is a computer running Windows Server 2008 and that NPS service. So you'll notice there's some overlap here between your enforcement points and your health policy servers. And there's a lot more things that are going to run here. The enforcement points might involve, there's a health registry authority. This is a computer that runs 2008 Windows Server and Internet Information Services that gets health certificates from a certificate authority for compliant NAP clients. And the bottom line is what you're doing is you're making sure part of the authentication onto the network is that validated NAP clients have a certificate that's been assigned to them, and we're checking for that to make sure that these guys are up to speed from the standpoint that we need. And then of course you're going to need an Active Directory domain controller. So my best advice is you need to investigate this, but you'll need to go out to Microsoft's website, do a search on network access protection, download some white paper information, and start to look at setting this up. But this is going to be huge. This is a great way to protect yourself and to limit people. And then past that, you're going to need a restricted network. Now, as you read these white papers, you're going to notice that I can determine who gets on the network based on the health of their computer, which is huge. But if I don't like what I see in the health of their computer, I can give them access or hook them into a restricted network. And this restricted network has machines that are set up to basically install and configure the antiviral, anti-spyware software that I would like to see on their machines before they get full access to my network. So this is really cool. It's not just a situation of telling you, you can't connect to my network because you don't meet my health requirements, but I tell you what, you don't meet my health requirements, so I'm going to connect you to this restricted network that keeps you safely restricted from the rest of my working network, and then I'm going to kind of help you get your computer up to speed. I'm going to configure it for you and then let you have access to the full network. So that's network access protection. Again, I'm just touching from a 10,000-foot view on this. You need to read up on this and go through the process of implementing this in your network. The inclusion of IP version 6 in the Windows Server 2008 server operating system is going to be one of the biggest inclusions. It's going to be a big, huge deal when we look back on this a few years from now. Microsoft calls this TCPIP Next Generation. They have completely rewritten the TCPIP stack, or the networking stack, in the Server 2008 system. And a lot of the reason was to include IP version 6. Now you're going to hear a lot about this in the coming months and years, and it is something I can't strongly enough suggest that you start reading about. And I'll mention that a couple of hundred times throughout this course. But let's talk about what's going on. First of all, there are some challenges. Right now we're using TCPIP version 4. Now the first big challenge is we're facing an exhaustion of addresses. Now a few years ago, a lot of people were really yelling the sky's falling and we're not going to have any more addresses, and we enhanced our routing technologies and so forth, and we started really going pretty aggressively after subnetting, and it alleviated the problem for a while, but it's created other challenges, and we'll talk about them as we go forward. First off, IP4 gives us 32-bit address spaces. That gives us 4,294,967,296 addresses. Now, because of the way that this thing was managed and done early on, we don't really have this many available. Also, we have some other challenges. Since TCP/IP and the internet and all that technology was developed and invented here in the United States, it is a very United States centric type situation, and a lot of the addresses and address spaces have been claimed and used and utilized in the U.S., and it's created some issues for addressing in other places in the world, and some shortages and so forth, and so that needs to be addressed as well. TCP/IP was not designed for the environment in which we're using it now. As a worldwide network that is security based, the internet is a nasty neighborhood to be out there without protection. It's a bad neighborhood you don't want to go into without protection, and so as a result, we're trying to do some things with TCP/IP, again, that it wasn't designed to do, and we're having some real challenges with that. Configuring TCP/IP right now, you can either do it manually or use DHCP, the Dynamic Host Control Protocol. And while that's okay, it requires a little too much attention by the administrators. Again, keep in mind, if we're talking about having millions and millions, if not billions and billions of portable devices, various internet devices out there. At some point we've really got to get away from having to handle these individually as administrators to configure them. So anyway, we also have a requirement in TCPIP because of the security risks out there on the internet that we have security provided at the IP layer. Now, currently we have this. It's provided by IPsec, but IPsec was not as integrally designed with TCPIP version 4 as what we need, and there are other proprietary standards in use out there which makes for problems. So we have this requirement for security, and we need prioritized real-time data delivery. And we don't have that now because most TCP/IP traffic goes through some sort of NAT or network address translator because we're obscuring private addresses on the inside of our network from the public addresses on the outside for no other reason than to conserve addresses. So we can't really go point to point. We really go in router to router and then translating from there. IP version 4 has a number of capability limitations that are coming about simply because we're just trying to use the protocol in a world that it wasn't designed for. So now let's shift to IP version 6. What does it get us? First thing, a large address space. We now have, with IP version 6, a 128-bit address space, and in English that means 3.4 times 10 to the 38th power. How big is that number? By most scientist estimates, the number of stars in the universe is less than the number of address spaces available in IP version 6. There are more address spaces in IP version 6 than there are grains of sand on the earth. So we're talking about providing enough addresses for an enormous number of TCP/IP devices to be on the worldwide network. Now, this is a shocker to see. NAT, network address translation, will no longer be needed in a pure IP version 6 world. We will actually be able to go totally end-to-end on our IP communication between devices. IP version 6 also promises simplified configuration as compared to IP version 4. We can still use stateless address configurations with technologies like DHCP, but we can also configure these without DHCP, and I'm not talking about a manual configuration. I'm talking about a fully automatic configuration that does not rely on a DHCP server. Pretty wild, and we don't have enough time to go into how, but we'll talk about getting yourself up to speed on IP version 6 in a later video. The security requirement at the IP layer currently is provided by IPsec. There is IPsec header support that's a requirement in IP version 6, which means those problems go away. IPsec is part of the plan in IP version 6. So this solves a lot of problems out there for the TCP/IP world and for the internet as it's continuing to evolve and grow. And so we'll talk more about IP version 6 in the next video. Now let's continue our discussion of IP version 6. There's a couple of things you need to understand, and I want to make these very clear in this video. IP version 6 is coming, okay? It's going to happen. The question is when, all right? The answer is it's going to be a few years before this is fully implemented. This is not going to be an easy little switch because we fundamentally changed some aspects of the TCP/IP protocol. Most assuredly, the size and the organization of the frames, the way routing is done with this technology, all sorts of things, and you'll see as we talk more here, there's some real significant changes going on. This is going to require some fundamental changes to our routers and various devices on our networks, how they operate, what they do. We're going to have to go through probably an extended period of doing some tricks to make TCP/IP version 6 work in mixed environments. We're going to have to always provide backward compatibility to IP version 4 because obviously it's going to take the world quite a few years for everybody to get up to speed on this. Administrators should start learning now. If you want to get yourself prepared to be a really useful administrator in the coming years, you need to be getting you some books on IP version 6 and start learning. A lot of the things that you understood about networking in the IP version 4 world are going to change. You will not be conversant or understand some of the basics about what's going on with network addressing and network traffic from an IP4 standpoint in the new IP version 6 world. So get ready to learn TCPIP almost all over again. You should begin testing and exploring IP version 6 with the virtual environments, VMware, virtual PC, and so forth. I would start to set up some test networks, start to play with IP version 6, and really start to get your hands around it. I think the guys and ladies who understand IP version 6 are going to find themselves in demand. This is one of those times in the whole information technology world when it's like everything stops, the train slows down. It's your chance to jump on and really make a name for yourself and really make a cool career, and that is IP version 6. The really cool thing about IP version 6 is that in Windows Server 2008, IP version 4 and IP version 6 are both supported, but even better, they are both enabled. You can use IP version 6 today as soon as you install Windows Server 2008. So you got some homework to do. IP version 6 can be disabled if you don't want to use it. And very simply, you're going to go in just like you're going to make a change on your TCPIP properties. And actually, let's go out there and take a look at that right quick. So you'll notice from the desktop, I'm going to click on Start. Then I'm going to go to the Network on the control panel right here. Not on the control panel, but on the Start menu. And I'm just going to right click and go to Properties. A lot of ways to get in here. And you'll notice I'm in the new Network and Sharing Center. Okay. Then I will go to Manage Network Connections. And from this point, now this is one of those examples of a new GUI interface. But I will right click on the connection and go to Properties. This now takes me to a very familiar window, right? The Local Area Network or Local Area Connection Properties, excuse me. Notice IP version 6 is enabled. All I have to do to disable it is uncheck this, okay, and it won't be enabled anymore. There may be some advantages to doing this. I haven't seen any right now. If it really bugs you that that's on, you can go in and disable it, and if I clicked OK here, that would disable it, but I'm going to leave mine alone. So I just wanted you to see that's how to disable that. So now that I've shown you how to disable IP version 6, let's continue on here. Now, to give you an idea of what's coming, this is a typical IP version 4 address, 192.168.4.112. If you're familiar with subnetting, you know how the subnet mask applies to this and so forth. Let me give you your first look, possibly, or a look at an IP version 6 address. There it is. Notice it's not quite as user-friendly to remember. We're going to have to really depend on DNS in the future and refer to our objects on the internet, or our hosts on our networks, I should say, by their English name, their DNS name, and then resolve them. Now, exactly, this just really fascinates me and blows my mind, so I'm going to come back to this. How big is the IP version 6 address field out there? Here's the number. I don't even know how to tell you this. Here's hundreds, here's thousands, hundreds of thousands, here's millions, here's billions. So at 431 billion, we've still got this many more. Okay, the bottom line is that we can provide multiple IP addresses to every grain of sand on the planet. That's where we're headed, and that should give you an idea of where this technology and where the internet is headed in the near future. Many of the devices that you pick up in the next probably 10 years from now for sure will have an IP address. Every appliance in your home, many of the things on your desk, in your pockets, are cell phones, or they won't be cell phones by that point, but almost everything's going to be an IP device on a network. Okay, it's really going to escalate and do, so we're going to see some pretty wild things with this technology in the next few years. This is a real quick look at IP version 6. Again, big hint, if you get nothing else from this course, it's worth the price right here. Start learning IP version 6. Those who have a jump on this going to have a great jump on some career opportunities. Trust me, this is going to be huge, and it's going to be a major revision and change, a new way of thinking. A lot of things to wrap your head around here. So get busy, okay? Now let's take a look at configuring TCPIP. in the Windows Server 2008 environment. Now, in other videos, I talked about TCPIP version 6 and version 4. For right now, you're going to be in the version 4 environment, and probably so for the next few months, years. So let's talk about version 4. The first thing I want to do to configure TCPIP on my server is come down and go to Start, and then I'm just going to open Server Manager. Now, I got there a little bit differently in another place in this video, and I'll show you this now. If I right-click on Network that pops up on the menu and go to Properties, it will take me into the Network and Sharing Center, and then I can choose to manage network connections from there. And then from here I can right-click on my connection and go to Properties and get into the window. Okay? Well, let me show you a little bit different way to go in there, and it's probably the way that you will go once you get comfortable inside the new Server Manager environment. And that is, I'll click on Start, and then I will choose Server Manager. It's up here on the Start menu. Okay? Or if I go into Administrative Tools, you'll see Server Manager right here. Okay? Either one of these will take me to the same place. So I'll click on Server Manager, and this opens the Server Manager. Obviously, you'll notice over here under Computer Information section there is a View Network Connections, and if I click that, it will take me to the Network Connections dialog box. Now, once I'm in here, if I click on a connection, I want you to notice this just appeared when I clicked on the that particular network connection. Now, if I had multiple cards, network cards in this machine, I would see them listed here. But notice I can disable this network, I can diagnose this connection, and I can even rename this connection. Well, if I diagnose the connection, notice it goes out there, tells me it didn't find any problems with the connection. I can restart the adapter or whatever. I'll just close this. Then there's some more things. More commands. If I click on the little two arrows here, I can view the status of this connection. Now notice if I click this, this shows me the local status. Notice it shows me my IP4 connectivity. I'm connected to the internet. IP version 6 is enabled but limited. Okay, the speed of my connection, and then I can click on details on this connection and see a lot more info about this particular network adapter connection. Then I can see properties down here. If I click on properties, notice this takes me to my old familiar friend, the local area connection properties. Okay, show you another shortcut here. Going to close all this out. Let's just assume that we just jumped into the network connections panel. If I go right here and choose change the settings of this connection, it takes me straight to this connection window. So to make a change on IP version 4, which is what we're using, I'll click on this and go to properties. Here's my old familiar window. The way I have it set right now, it will obtain an IP address and a DNS server address automatically from a DHCP server, and that is generally what we want to do. This is assuming there's a DHCP server on my network that will provide me with an address. If I want it to provide a static IP address to this particular server, and the static IP address is one that never changes, I can choose use the following IP address and then just put in whatever address I would like. Put in a subnet mask, it will default to that. Give it a default gateway, whatever that is, and then provide it a DNS server address. I can click the advanced button down here and make some more changes. I can add additional IP addresses to this particular card if I would like. I can add other gateways. I can edit this particular gateway. I can go to DNS, and if I have additional DNS servers that I want to try, I can add other DNS servers in and then tell it in what order to hit these servers or to try these servers. So a lot of information going on. WINS, don't use WINS much anymore, but if for any other kind of reason you need to use WINS, this is where you would set it up. This will give you the address of your WINS server. Okay, and that really is kind of how you're going to go about configuring TCPIP. Again, I will mention IP version 6, you'll notice here, is enabled. If I click on properties, I can go in and type an IP version 6 address if I would like. This is going to be a chore. Same as an advanced tab here for some things. And if I don't want IP version 6 to be functional right now because I'm not using it, I know I'm not going to use it in the near future, and it just bugs me to have it on, it's not going to hurt anything to be on, I can turn it off right here or disable it. Okay, that's the basics on configuring TCP/IP. Nothing has changed fundamentally from the earlier Windows Server versions. It's just, again, some graphical user interface on how I get in there. Okay, and so it can be a little bit intimidating at first until you get used to the interface here, but I think you're going to like it a lot better once you get into it. So anyway, there's a quick overview on how you're going to configure TCP/IP in the Windows Server 2008 environment. Now let's talk about an answer to the question, what's a Tirado? Now that's with a Southern Tennessee accent. So if you're from another part of the world or the U.S., you may pronounce that a little bit differently. But for now, it's Tirado, okay? When we start to look to moving from IP4 to 6, understand this is not a trivial pursuit here. This is going to involve some pretty serious brain work and preparation. And so there's some conversion technologies that are kind of surfacing out there, and Tirado happens to be one of these, but for some reason Microsoft has kind of more or less hitched its wagon, if you will, that's a technical term for you, to the idea of Tirado as one of the technologies. And there's actually three major technologies out there for converting and living in a /IP4/IP6 environment. The first one is ISATAP, and that means in English Intrasite Tunneling Addressing Protocol. And what we're going to do here is we're going to actually tunnel, hang on just a second here, we're going to tunnel the IP version 6 stuff into version 4 and move this stuff around. Each one of these has its own personality and its own quirks, and so you'll have to investigate them. But I just want to bring them to your attention because you're going to hear about these within and without the IP version 6 qualifier around them. You'll hear someone in the near future start to talk about their ISATAP issues, or they're running 6-4 to try to get ready and this and that, and they're talking about IP version 6 conversion technologies. 6-4 requires an upgraded router to run 6-4, and the big problem to upgrading to version 6 means that you have to have upgraded routers, but also to update to even a conversion capability, you also have to have upgraded routers out on the perimeters or the edge of your network where it jumps into the internet. And so that's kind of one of the main concerns here. And then of course Tirado. And Tirado is a different technology. It provides hosts with IP version 6 connectivity without requiring a 6-4 router and a public address to do so. So again, there's all kind of ifs, ands, and buts and different ways to go about this. In the Microsoft world, Tirado kind of seems to be encompassing the whole idea of IP version 4 to 6 conversion. So just kind of be aware that when you hear Tirado, that's what they're talking about, because we're in for a pretty interesting run here about exactly how to get from IP version 4 to IP version 6. There are some great resources out there. There is a white paper out there called Manageable Transition to IP6 using ISATAP. And whether you pronounce that ISATAP, ISATAP, or however the pronunciation's going, I've heard it a bunch of different ways now. Go to Microsoft.com and just do a search for Manageable Transition to IP version 6 using ISATAP. There are a number of downloads out there on Microsoft's site, and actually maybe even a little better idea is just go to Microsoft.com, www.microsoft.com, IP version 6, and I want to take you out there to that site and just show it to you right quick. This is a great site that Microsoft has set up, and so let me just jump out to the internet. I'm going to go to Internet Explorer here and show it to you. I'm just going to go to www.microsoft.com IP version 6, and this is a tremendous resource for the whole IP version 6 world that Microsoft has set up. Notice there's a blog and a news group for it, but I'm in 800 by 600 DPI to record the movies here, so let me just scroll down very slowly and let you see that they give you some generals for this, but then there are objectives, development and deployment of the whole technology, enabling next generation networking with end-to-end IPv6. Then there are some technical overviews, a great introduction. I would strongly recommend you start printing these out and just start looking at them. Notice this paper, IP6 Transition Technologies, describes ISATAP 6-4 and Tirado. You can also get a webcast version of the white paper, which is fabulous. Then a Tirado overview. This just goes on and on and on, and you see lots of cool information here for grabbing this introductions and figuring out what's going on and how best to move forward. So anyway, take advantages of these resources. And again, let me scroll back up here. I'm probably making you sick. www.microsoft.com/IP version 6, and it will redirect you, notice right here, into TechNet. But take advantage of these resources and begin to read on them. And let's get up to speed on IP version 6.